Thanks for joining us today. This is a very special episode of the Innovation Today GenAI Perspectives video service. So I'm your host, Dave Wright. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer at ServiceNow. And today I wanted to welcome Paul Webb, who's the Global Alliance Leader at Ernst & Young. So Paul, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Dave. Great to see you again.
No, good to see you as well. We're going to, I suppose it's inevitable. We're going to talk about GenAI because it does seem to be on the forefront of everyone's mind. And I think everyone looks at it in different ways. Everyone's got different opinions on it. But I wondered if we could kick off by just having a discussion around why we think GenAI is so important right now.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, it is becoming so prolific. I mean, my kid uses it for taking notes. I was chatting to a recruiter we were using the other day, and he does all his recruitment using an AI tool. It's like, man, and I think some things that are not actually real AI are getting branded AI just because it's it's topical, right? But if you get down to the Gen AI capability that's starting to show up for us, the ability to summarize huge amounts of information, coalesce it, interpret it, and render it in a way that is easy to digest. We've been desperate for that answer for a long, long time. And I think what it can do for us as a society is massive. I think we have to be super careful. But the ability to take huge volumes of data, analyze it, interpret it, coalesce it quickly is going to be transformational for society.
I mean, it's been interesting from my perspective. I think when GenAI came out, it kind of reignited everyone's interest in artificial intelligence itself. But it did. I do find a lot of confusion. I do find a lot of people talking to me about GenAI, and I'm thinking, well, that's not GenAI. That's just plain AI. I think one of the interesting things is like considering the actual definition of what GenAI is. I mean, what do you see this as much more around the creation area rather than the prediction area?
I think really it's both, right? I don't think you can narrow it down too much because if I look at the ability to build, there's such a focus on large language models, but I think these sort of almost mini language models, like, large volume of text summarization. I mean, it was a running joke yesterday. We have one colleague that creates massive emails, and by the time you get 3 weeks into a thread with him, you could write a PhD thesis. And having an Outlook tool that summarizes that for us would be hugely beneficial. So I think some of this sort of capability is going to be great. Then you've got the, code generation, like you guys are building into the platform, the ability to use human syntax, normal syntax to then generate sophisticated applications is going to revolutionize the way businesses like EY interact with our client. I mean, it's no longer going to take 9 months to deliver a solution to a client. It's going to be weeks. We'll be able to do a minimum viable product in such short order as a result of, where you guys are taking the platform. So I think it's going to be truly fascinating to see what's coming soon in this space.
From when I look at it from a ServiceNow perspective, the main use cases we see around GenAI tend to focus on call deflection. So some of it's kind of what you were saying about email summarization. We get the same thing where it could be a massive long incident or problem ticket, especially if you have a follow the sun support model, to just be able to log on and see that summary is cool. The impact it has on virtual agents is pretty cool. Now you have a much more natural conversation and the ability to take articles and be able to generate articles from them, something that people seem to be quite into. But it's I think it's affecting different industries in different ways. And it was interesting what you were saying then around how it changes the world of consulting. Does it, although it speeds up what you can deliver, does it does it open any new avenues or close any existing avenues in the world of consulting?
I'm going to say it's going to open a lot of new ones, because if you think about the challenges a lot of companies have when it comes to transformation, you have to invest heavily to do exponential change, right? If you're doing traditional continuous improvement, then you can invest small amounts of money in incremental steps to get where you want to go on the journey. But if you really want to disrupt the business or disrupt the market, you have to do transformation at speed. But if you have this vision of what the future looks like, and it takes you a year to implement, let's just stick with ServiceNow, a year to implement a new workflow solution for any aspect of your business, then that's, even though it's transformation, it's so slow. So if we can take the platform and using GenAI deliver a minimum viable product to a client that is disruptive to the market or disruptive to the business in 3 months, that is really going to change the pace of which business disruption happens, which I think is, we can only imagine how quickly we can, leapfrog, from where we are today to where we're going to be tomorrow. I mean, it's super exciting.
I agree that is really exciting, but I also find a lot of people struggle with it. So some kind of the buzzword for the last decade in tech has been digital transformation, and you alluded to it then. There's a lot more digital than there is transformation. People people just take what they did and like digitize that process, but they don't question the process. So you end up doing kind of what you did before, but you either do it faster or you do more of it, as opposed to saying, well, why do we even do that at all? So I think one of the interesting thing is going to be when people actually start to use generative AI to ask how they could do things differently than they did it before. But I don't see many people having that AI mindset yet. A lot of people are still kind of stuck in that, let's just digitize it and do what we used to do.
Yeah, I mean, the imagine ifs question, right? Hey, Gen AI, write me an application that will, process all these invoices coming from here and send out this information to so-and-so and do X. And then so instead of focused on the how do I do it, you're just telling it what you want it to achieve. If the language model's sophisticated enough and the database is big enough that it can draw from, the expectation, and I know this is where you guys are looking at heading, the expectation is it's going to come back with a best practice. It's going to completely ignore how you've done it previously and just go, hey, I've got 50 different versions of it. Here's the best practice. That's going to deliver real transformation. Now, you could easily go on with the conversation and say, well, it's still looking at how things have been done before. So the best I can expect is historical best in class. But then that's assuming AI doesn't get any better. If AI gets any better, then one would hope that the next evolution is going to be, well, here's best in class, but I'm really an AI. So now I'm going to, invent something you've never seen before because I'm going to extrapolate beyond the repository, with creative thinking. And I don't think AI is there yet, but it's obvious it's going to get there in the end.
And you've got the kind of the exponential growth curve that you get where you look at going from GPC 3 to 4.5. They had that, what they said was a 10x improvements in performance / intelligence. And it's pretty good now. But if you imagine going from where we are now, so something like GPC 6, if we see that same 10x evolution, then you're dealing with something that's potentially on a level that's higher than people have ever got before. If you could measure a machine's IQ, it may well surpass what level the humans achieved before. And then then I think, to go to your point, a lot of it comes down to the prompt rather than asking it to build something. It's always like what you said. It's like outcome based AI. It's like, how could I, or how would you?
Yeah, it's so fascinating to me, and it's going to totally disrupt our world, the consulting world, because we're not going to be looking at, a whole bunch of people creating code. We're not even going to be looking at the historical brains of, hey, I'm a subject matter expert in this topic, therefore this is leading practice. It's going to be, I'm going to ask AI to take my knowledge and its knowledge and come up with something that I may not even have been able to think about. And by the way, instead of me spending 6 months and 50,000 hours building that, now it's going to be a lot more creative thinking to do it in 1,000 hours or something like that, right? It's going to change the way we interact with our customer in a really dramatic way. Not tomorrow, but soon.
But that could be really interesting for you guys in a way, because to go back to what we were saying before about digital transformation, obviously if you go on a big engagement with a customer, a lot of that time is spent by how do we build the code, how do we implement the solution. Now you get to free up some of that time to actually go back to a more classical, how do I actually transform your business? How do I get you to think differently? So that's got to be good for you guys.
It really is. I mean, like I said, it's easy to be scared of it. It's very easy to say, that's not the business we've been in. But if I look at my career over the, multiple decades, people didn't hire me because I'd write code. People hired me because I could think of creative ways of solving a business problem. Now we can take that creative way of solving a business problem and just tell the technology to go do it for us. That with hopefully, and it is hopefully, a lower risk that it's going to do it wrong.
That's interesting. When you think about, will it do it right? Will it do it wrong? One of the things I've noticed is if I look at my kids when they use GenAI, and I think this is an interesting thing about the technology. This is the first time a piece of technology's kind of hit the consumer world and the business world at exactly the same time, and everyone's learning how to use it. But my kids are way better at writing prompts than I am. They seem to have much more of a free thinking approach, or they tailor prompts a lot more to get things that are really specific. And I wonder whether that whole, well, maybe we get to the point actually where AI is the thing that's writing the prompts, and it's guiding us with what the best prompts are to get the solution.
That's the scary end game, isn't it?
Well, that's when we talk about the way that AI has improved, some of the things that you see now with the kind of self-improving algorithms where you can actually look at the mathematical impact of what a result was. And if you get that mathematical impact, you can try and work out what to do to increase that score. When you start to get this self-evolving, self-correcting AI, that's something that is massively game-changing.
Yeah, I memean, the future is future's bright. Let's just hope it's not a supernova.
Well, what do you think? Because we're in a similar position, I suppose. We both get used based on experience, based on exposure, what we've seen across different industries, and as you start to use AI to improve someone's skills, so use it as a leveler to pick someone up. One of the things I was talking to a customer about a few weeks ago was what does that mean for things like salaries? So if you had someone who was this good and with an AI assistant they're now this good, do you reward them from that, or is it just you're able to provide a better level of service at a lower cost? Because I try and put it in industry terms, I suppose. If you're a level 3 support person, you're going to get paid more than a level 1 support person. But if I can use AI to bring you up to almost the same level, then how do I deal with that from an equity perspective?
Yeah, I kind of don't even want to think about that. I want to leave that to the HR department. It's so fascinating, isn't it? Because if you think of, rewinding the clock to the Industrial Revolution, when, technology could produce a shirt, a suit, faster, better, higher quality than, a normal one person could, and do it at scale. We're getting to that place now with technology in AI. It's like a new iteration of the Industrial Revolution, and everybody adapted, but there was fallout, and it took time to deal with the fallout. Now, if you want a really nice suit, you find someone that will build you that really nice suit, and it'll be a one of a kind, and you'll walk down the runway in it. So there will always be a place for masters and experts of a skill. I have friends who are musicians that, get really upset with some of the stuff that AI can produce around music and with art. But I do think, without sort of rambling too much, I do think that how we see human beings and their role in business, and it comes to this sort of transformational space, is going to have to adapt. And I don't think we quite know how yet.
I think you started off a good chain of thought then around the whole industrial revolution thing. When we go through these big revolutions, be it the agriculture, the industrial, the digital, or maybe now the intelligence revolution, the interesting thing is kind of looking at the aftermath of it, because when we first went into the industrial revolution, you saw people like the Luddites destroying machinery because they thought it was going to take jobs, and we've had like similar fears about AI. But you look at what happens in the decades after that, and the people who were potentially weavers before, who were making cloth, you started to see people become engineers, people become mechanics. And then when we went from the 1800s to the 1900s, we started seeing people moving into telecoms, and then we saw advances in electronics. So you end up with all these jobs that didn't exist like just a few decades before. We did a sales kickoff a few weeks ago, and I had all the solution consultants in the room, and we were talking about what life looks like after AI, and we had this whole discussion about the fear of, well, what are people going to do? And I highlighted to them that if you went back even 40 years, maybe 50 years, no one in that room would have had a job. No one was a solution consultant in 1974, but here I am in a room with 2,500 of them just in one company. So things evolve, new things do appear all the time.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, as we look at something you said earlier about compensating people that are upskilled because of AI, I think you and I talked about this in our last conversation. If you think about the number of people that do tier 1 help desk support right now, and how many of those are going to be displaced by a hyper-intelligent chatbot. Now you've got a whole cadre of human beings that you can upskill thanks to AI. They're no longer going to do tier 1 help desk, but now they know how to write prompts to be better skilled, better capable. And that's then going to offer new career opportunities for them. So as I don't want to say there's not a problem here, because I think the social disruption that's coming is significant. And maybe the word significant is a huge understatement. But I think the potential for upskilling people as a result will also occur in parallel. And I don't think we're yet in a place where anyone other than someone that focuses on this every single minute of the day can really predict.
Yeah, I'd agree. Because I think it's going to be interesting to see how artificial intelligence develops develops its own style. Let's call it its own style. You made me think about this when you talked about musicians before. So I played around with the AI tools where it's like, hey, create me an Elvis song, but sing it in the style of Frank Sinatra, and it'll do something that sounds vaguely like Frank Sinatra singing an Elvis song. But the interesting thing about those prompts are, if I say, draw me a picture in the style of Dali, it will create me a picture in the style of Dali. But in order to do that, there has to be a Dali. So, do me something in the style of Rembrandt. There has to be a Rembrandt. I've never tried it as a prompt. I don't know what would happen if I said, create me a picture of a bridge in your style. I don't know what it thinks your style is. And it's kind of the same when you think about the world of technology. If it's being trained on how you've done things in the past, I wonder at what point it'll get to the point where it's like, well, this just isn't the best way to do it. This just isn't the optimal way to do it anymore. Whether it'll create new ways of doing things.
Yeah. I mean, my teenager's an artist, studying at a residential art school here, and they're so disgusted with what AI is generating in the art world right now. My kid is like, they're just not happy about it, right? So just put it that way. 18-year-old that's sitting there going, this is not the way the world's supposed to go. And what I'm seeing in parallel is there is something happening in Tasmania where they're putting the intelligence in and the artificial out. And you can submit your artistic prompt to this portal, and they will find an actual artist in the country that will build you art based on that prompt. But it's not artificial. It's an actual human being that's going to build that art. So even AI is creating a new opportunity for real artists that didn't exist 6 months ago. So it's like, yeah, it's there. People can play with it. Yeah, it's cool. Yes, it can maybe accelerate thinking, like when you're trying to write an essay, but it's still stimulating new artistic, creative thinking, right? And I think this is a good example of someone thinking outside the box.
So that's kind of like, that's almost like the distributed autonomous organization concept, but for
exactly.
I suppose, that's got potential in a lot of worlds, I suppose. Even, I'm thinking about things like maker communities, where people have got the ability to build things. I was talking to a car manufacturer the other day, and they were talking about the impact of like 3D printing on their worlds, which was way more significant than I imagined. So I suppose there's a lot of things that spin off from this.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of these federated models like the maker community that are kicking in. I mean, my wife has a small business and takes advantage of that gig economy all the time. But I just thought it was so cool that AI spurned a whole new way for artists to, collaborate and get the word out. So anyway, it's kind of cool.
What do you think, if you think about our world a little bit more, every company's now got, every company hasn't got an AI strategy. Every company is being told it needs an AI strategy. What do you think? I have a lot of conversations with people where they're like, well, we're not exactly sure what to do. We're not exactly sure whether to build our own LLMs. Do we go with industry LLMs? Do we go with all the different providers, artificial intelligence? And it's kind of, sometimes it feels like it's slowing down the adoption, which mightn't be a bad thing. It might be good to let it settle. But have you had any conversations in the past where you felt that people are pushing back? And if they are, has that got implications to the company itself?
I think there's tons of overwhelm, right? Not knowing where to start. Too much AI conversation, not enough AI experts. But what I am seeing is there's a lot of grassroots. It comes with its own problem. I have a colleague or a dear friend who is a developer for a local software company. And he's just started using AI tools to write Python code for him because it's faster. It just generates it a lot quicker. He said it generates bugs, it creates problems. Sometimes it, completely makes up nonsense, but most of the time it's pretty good. And so something that might take him a weekend to build, he does on a Friday afternoon and then spends the weekend, either riding his bike or doing better things with the code it built for him. And I guarantee you he's not the only developer in the company doing that. So we're already seeing this sort of bottoms-up consumption of the platforms and the tools. So regardless of whether or not the company has a strategy, the individual contributors have a tactical approach, which then means you need AI governance. And there's, from our joint press release recently, that's a hot topic for us to make sure you don't end up with rogue AIs throughout the company, putting the business at risk. But I think that these individual contributors, as has historically been the case, will then say, hey, we need to do more of X. We need to buy this technology. So they'll push the conversation up while the folks at the top are still trying to work out how to push the strategy down.
So that's okay. Yeah, I get that. That's kind of the mirror of what happened with cloud strategy. A lot of companies that say, hey, we're going to move to the cloud and we're going to do this. And why they were doing that, there was a lot of employees saying, well, why are you all thinking about that? I'm just going to use my credit card and I'm going to buy these servers. And you had exactly what you said. You had what we used to call VM sprawl. You had people buying things in different clouds that people couldn't track. And then exactly what you said, the governance of that cloud became phenomenally important. So let's understand what we've got and where it is.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I remember colleagues going, we don't have a CRM system, in small businesses. I'm just going to go and buy this cloud CRM tool and buy 5 licenses and use it. And so then you end up eventually 6 months later, the company says, hey, our strategy is to use this CRM tool. And they go, well, hang on a minute, we're already using this one over here. So forget that. Let's just adopt this as the corporate standard. Saw so much of that back when I was, my previous life.
Yeah, I saw systems be displaced that way, where there'd be a system that was in place that people didn't like using, and small pockets would start using different systems, and then eventually you get to the point where the rogue system overtakes the corporate standard.
So it's a bottom-up strategy model as opposed to a top-down, and you've got to anticipate that AI is going to go somewhat the same way, because the barrier to entry is so low. It's free. Most of it is currently free. So, businesses better hurry up and get the strategic thinking caps on.
But I think we even saw that when everyone first started using OpenAI's GPT the start of last year. The shock on people's faces when they found out that the data they were submitting and then summarizing or creating was now public domain. No one had even realized that at that point. That was a governance alarm for a lot of people. How do you think, with all these different technologies and all these different possibilities, it kind of changes all the metrics that we used to use to track things? Are you trying to think about how we actually track success in this too anyway?
Gosh, I think there are much smarter people than me in our firm trying to solve for that problem right now. So I would say, go chat to one of our AI strategic thinkers like Dan Desario on that topic, not me. What I'm doing is focus far more on the real world execution. How do we help our clients with the story? How do we go to market with offerings that make a ton of sense in this space, like the responsible AI offering? But when it comes down to how do we measure success, it's going to be down to dollars and cents in the door, really, isn't it? I mean, it's like, for us, as a consultant, we want to be able to see client outcomes clients have very successful outcomes with the work they do with us. And if AI can accelerate that or deliver a better experience, then we'll check the box and say we win. But step one for us is trying to work out what are the right tools? How do we use them effectively? And how do we avoid inflation of value based on hype as opposed to pragmatism and what's truly doable right now? Whatever you do, don't expect an AI to give you plain English back and understand my accent when I ask it. I mean, I can't even get basic text-to-speech to work. So we're a ways away from some of the cool things we'd like to see.
It's funny, definitely in my world, speaking to people, the whole concept of how you measure success is flipped through a 180. So it used to be, everyone used to measure call volume, and now, or even mean time to resolution, and now people are measuring how many calls they didn't open. How many calls were avoided. I had a real funny discussion with a CIO, but this was probably 3 or 4 years ago, when we first started to do like predictive event management, so we could look at an event stream and say, hey, we think something's going to happen. And it was a whole debate around, I don't want you to screw up my metrics by opening an incident for something that might happen in the future. I like those conversations. They're quite interesting. I mean, that leads on to another question, I guess. What do you think people aren't asking? When people start to talk about artificial intelligence, specifically Gen AI, what do you think people aren't asking that they potentially should ask?
Ooh.
I mean, I can give examples on my side. For me, the big thing people aren't asking enough is why. Why do we do it that way? And I had a discussion with someone the other day around. They said, hey, it's great that generative AI can produce knowledge articles. And I was like, yeah, I suppose it is, because it saves you writing the knowledge article. But in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, why would you want a knowledge article? Why wouldn't you just want the answers to the question? Yeah. And there's still that kind of thing around. I was with a huge hardware vendor the other day, and we were talking about using different technologies to be able to visualize charts. We were talking about augmented reality in the world of data visualization. But again, quite a weird way of thinking. I don't know if I want to look at a chart and extrapolate data. I'd rather have AI say, hey, I've noticed this, and this is probably what's causing it, rather than me trying to interpret it using new technology.
Yeah. I guess for me, it's less about the questions they're not asking as the intellectual leaps forward they're not taking and not about, right? So the example I gave about the social disruption of tier one help desk is going to go away. So what does the world look like without tier one help desk? Augmented reality can give you a completely different way of visualizing the world. What is that going to look like 3 years from now? If you, instead of saying, well, it's early days, the VR headsets are, kind of cool, but they're kind of for games, but it's not going to stop there. It's going to be somewhere else in 3 years. So what's your visualization experience you want your customers to have, you want your employees to have? When we do take away all of this, what are we going to do with the people? When we do have all of this rich experience, how are we going to think about how people operate? Am I still going to use a keyboard? Am I still going to use a mouse? It's this sort of, we're still trapped in linear thinking as opposed to evolutionary thinking in a lot of cases. A lot of businesses just can't allow themselves to go that far forward. And I think we have to think that far forward because AI is moving faster than anything else we've played with. And I think augmented reality is going to follow it pretty quickly.
I think that's one of the challenges when you look at how most things progress over time. Most things progress at a fairly gradual rate. And even though AI's got a steeper rate, the interesting thing for me about AI is it progresses in steps. It's not a linear progression. All of a sudden you have a big advance and everything moves forward in this big step. And I think most companies can't deal with that. Most companies are like, hey, that's cool, but we can't move there just yet. We need to get to that gradually over time.
Well, and then if you think about OT, which is, I know a hot topic for you guys as much as it is for me. If you look at the number of devices that exist in the home, the number of devices that exist in an office building, and then you add AI thinking to that, the questions for me are, if you have all of this rich data available to you that's being fed by OT devices, and you're able to consume that as its own form of LLM, what can you do with that information? What is, once you have all these digital twins of a building and digital twins of a home and all of this solar data and all of this transmission data, and you throw that at an AI, what on earth can that do to the world, right? That's going to be a huge step forward in creative thinking for people.
Well, then I suppose you've kind of got your ultimate what if model. Once you've got that digital version of your company, to be able to say, what is the impact of buying this company, or what is the impact of launching this product? Then you end up with like a really weird thing that I hadn't thought about until you'd said it. Then you almost end up with like a virtual CEO or a CEO virtual assistant, where you can say, this is how I run my business. What will be the impact of me doing this? That's pretty big.
Yeah. Or you could say, if you just take facilities, I own 21 buildings. This building over here is running at 30% higher efficiency than this building over there. Why? And then you could go, okay, look at all of this data. Now tell me what optimum looks like. And then you take that to a manufacturing plant. You got multiple manufacturing plants around the world, and you go, this production line over here is running at this level of efficiency. And then I put all of that information into a model and then go, okay, optimal efficiency would say do X. Build your next plant like this. Yeah. So I don't know, the more creative you are, we're back to how can artists contribute to the world. I think that creative thinking, that analytical thinking is going to be really, really important, because the mechanics are going to be handled by the tech.
I think it's a great observation and a great thought. We I guess we're kind of at the end now from a time perspective. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add before we wrap it up.
I think we've covered most of the things that have been rattling around in my head. It's a fun time to be alive, and an important time to think creatively about how to use these tools and not be afraid of them. That, I think, is my feeling on the subject at the moment.
Well, I think that's a great goal to lead it on. Paul, I just wanted to thank you for joining us today. We've done these before. I always enjoy these. If someone told me I'd just have a job one day where I could talk about cool things with people, wouldn't have believed it. But there you go. So
yeah, I'm jealous.
So thank you for joining. Thank you to all the listeners that we've actually got. Please give the video a share if you like what you hear today. Make sure that you join us for the next episode. All right. Thanks a lot, everyone.